What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down some elite college wide receiver versus DB one-on-one film. So I hope this video helps you guys out. Hope it could teach you a few new things. But also, fellas, if you are a wide receiver and you struggle with knowing what to do on the field to work on your route running skills, check out that very first link in the description below for our 28-day on-field wide receiver workout plan. What you'll get access to is over 100 plus wide receiver drills, all broken down with what to do on a day-to-day basis. Monday you do this, Tuesday this, with sets and reps and a video example of each drill. So check out that very first link in the description below if you'd like some more information on how you can get access to that. Let's get started with this video. So first route we're looking at here is from a wide receiver out of the University of Florida, and he is going to be running a 10-yard out route versus an outside leverage off-man coverage DB. So we're going to talk about how you guys can structure your route versus this coverage. So let's play at full speed. This wide receiver does a great job of giving himself room after the break point to accelerate out and have the quarterback with some space to throw him open, which is the most important thing. So when we come out here and we got a DB before the ball is even snapped, all wide receivers, and if you watch this page, you know exactly what I'm talking about, we need to have a pre-snap process. We need to be able to identify three key things about a DB. Number one, first thing we look for is what his leverage is, because his leverage tells us what he wants us to do and what he doesn't want to give up. So in this case, he's outside leverage. He's shaded to the outside, so that means he's outside leverage. Number two, we look for how close or how far he is. In this case, he's maybe about 6 to 7 yards off, so that means that it's off man, outside leverage, and his eyes are on me, and he's in a squared up stance. So it looks like it's man. Because the third thing you want to look for is if it's man or if it's zone. If he's outside leverage, but his eyes and his stance are turned to the inside, and maybe there's a safety over the middle, that probably tells me that, okay, it looks most like zone. He's outside shade squared up, looks like off man. So if I have to run this 10-yard out, the mistake that a lot of wide receivers will make, which doesn't make them elite, this is where you don't get separation, you don't look like you know how to run routes, is they will try to simply, okay, I'm just going to square up the DB and get him to backpedal. I'm going to step on his toes and attack him. Now, here's the thing about a DB who's in outside leverage, and this is why it's important to have that pre-snap process, because you already know this. His goal is to protect the outside. So if you're trying to just run around him when you have to run an out route, a corner, a fade, guess what this DB is going to do? He's just going to keep his leverage. He's going to weave, as they call it. So you angle your stem to the inside and attack him, he's just going to keep that leverage. He's not going to just backpedal. He's going to do whatever possible to force you inside where he has help. So that can't be my only game plan. What this wide receiver's game plan was is he's going to attack the inside shoulder and inside hip of the DB, and our goal is to get him to flip open to a fade. So we could slip back underneath him and give my quarterback some space to throw me open, which is the number one thing, and also some space to accelerate, but we'll get to that. So since he is in the red zone, he's probably on like maybe, 10, 15-yard line going in. This is the red zone right here. It is very, very tough to just push vertical, get this DB to flip, and then slip underneath it. We're going to need to throw a move at the top of the break because he's not going to be threatened by a deep seam or a deep fade when he's in the red zone. He's just going to sit right there. He knows you're probably going to slip back underneath. So we got to make it look like a post, but at the same time, we're still threatening the inside shoulder, inside hip. So he'll commit and we could slip back underneath him. So this wide receiver decides to go with this move called a rocker step. So a rocker step is where you're making you're essentially cutting in the direction you're going first. So if he's running an out route, he's going to step with his outside foot first and then fake like he is going back to the inside. So he's essentially doing this out-in move to make it look like he's running a post, a dig, whatever it is. And if we're running with some speed, running in full stride, committing my upper half all at his inside shoulder, and then I throw this type of move, that's a great way to get me space. Now, when that DB's fully committed because we sold the route, this is where we win the race to the ball. After that move, it is a full-fledged, hard as you can sprint because this DB knows he got beat, he knows he flipped his hips, and we are running a route to his leverage, which is his responsibility. But since we gave the quarterback room, that's an easy throw for him. Guys, you got to understand that you being open by just a single step, that's open for the quarterback. All he needs is just room, and that's why we didn't just try to run around him. Because even if that DB is an outside shade and you do end up, let's go back to the very beginning. Let's say you do get to the outside of him and you break it off. That's way too tight of a window and not enough space. We have to give that quarterback space so I can actually accelerate widen the gap of the DB, but that's a quarterback-friendly throw. So this is as good as it gets, fellas. This is exactly how you would run that 10-yard out, outside leverage, off-man coverage. And even if it was zone, you would do the exact same thing. Just please do not force it and try to run around the DB. Let's play this again, full speed one more time. Great job by this wide receiver selling it and then giving himself space to run out of the break. Okay, so now, next example I want to talk about here is how you guys can use something called a stutter move on a route. So this is something you guys can use, even if it doesn't even have to be a stutter go. It doesn't even have to be like, it's not even essentially a designed portion of the route. It's more so like a tempo change on the route. Now, to be able to play at the collegiate level, which I'm sure a lot of you want to do, you're going to be going up against talented DBs. And talented DBs are very, very good at doing two things. They're good at reading your body language, but they are also good at reading your speed and your tempo. So let's say you're matched up against a DB. First quarter, you're getting some separation. Second quarter, that separation gets a little less. Third, fourth quarter, that DB's starting to get down your speed. And that is when wide receivers get in trouble because they have no other speed other than full speed. And that is where this stutter move can come into play. So this wide receiver is running like this fade ball, gives this little stutter move and just goes. Now, this stutter move, you don't want to waste too much time on this, right? So when you come off and you do this stutter, it's got to be just a quick little level change and a deceleration with your hips. So that's the only way that we're going to get this DB to stop his feet and stop his tempo. A lot of wide receivers will change tempo. They'll come off the ball, they'll give a move inside, and they'll give like a little like skip. I personally don't like that just because I feel like you can be a little off balance. That can work if you're comfortable, but to get this guy to stop, we have to stop. And we can stop myself by simply just thinking of it like it's a quick sit into a chair. What I've been telling my wide receivers lately is like, think of running routes when you have to drop your hips like you're playing musical chairs. Like I'm sure everybody has played that game as like a kid, musical chairs, music stops, you have to sit into a chair. When you guys sit down in that game, you're not sitting down slowly because you don't want to get out. You have a quick sit of your hips. So that's how I want to think of it right here. I burst up, I'm running full speed, I sit down in the chair quickly. That little sit down decelerates you, that decelerates a DB, and that gives me a chance to get him by more than just like half a step or a step. Even when you're faster than this guy, that's a great way to get space. So another way to win on that fade, fellas, is a change in tempo by using just a simple stutter go move. And again, it's not a stop and go, because a stop and go, you would full-fledged stop your momentum. It's just a quick little sit in the chair, and that can get that DB to stop. Okay, so now, next example I want to talk about here is another example from a wide receiver out of the University of Florida, and I want to talk about the importance of getting skinny and using your body to get you separation. So this is great, especially if you're a wide receiver on the bigger side of things. Even if you're on the smaller side of things, you can use this as well. So this wide receiver is running a dig route. He gives the DB a move, takes the inside release, but he leans into him at the break point. Now, this is not pass interference. He may have gotten away with a little bit of a push right here, but I'm going to talk to you guys on how you will never get called for PI when doing this. So this DB, he's like kind of lined up in head up press. If you have to run, we talk about that on the very first example, that out route versus outside leverage. You never want to force the route. Like if this DB were lined up hard inside leverage press, you would never want to try to force the inside release because the DB is just going to stay disciplined and just ride you to the inside, screwing up spacing on the play, screwing up timing on the play, etc. What you would want to do is you would want to attack him inside and take the outside release. But when he's head up press, like ideally if you're running an inside route like a post, a curl, a dig, you want to take the inside release. It's easier that way because there's no guy right here. You could just separate and be gone. So if he's head up, that's what we want to do. We want to try to threaten him to the outside, get him off the platform, then go. Now, when we run an inside breaking route and you have an inside release, so many wide receivers will get to this point and they'll just run away from contact and drift up into their route. Now, usually you will do this inside release when you have maybe like outside shade press, and that DB can force you to the inside where his help is, especially if you run away from him. So to create a bigger throwing window for your quarterback, you want to try to do something called getting skinny. And getting skinny is when you take your outside hip, in this case, an outside shoulder. It would be the other hip and shoulder if it were an outside release. And you almost want to go hip to hip with this DB. You want to get into his frame because at the break point, you can lean on him with your body, with your hips, with your entire body weight. And at the break point, you can almost push off without getting called for a push off. Now, this wide receiver may have gotten a little bit lucky because there was no flag called, but you see how his arm extends. We cannot do that. What you want to do is you want to keep that elbow nice and tight to your frame, and you want to lean into him Because if you lean into him at that break point with your body, that's not a push off. That's just you being physical at the top of the break. So especially if you're on the bigger side of things, wide receivers, we have to do this anytime that you get a free release. And by free release, or I should say ideal release, I mean an inside release on an inside breaking route or an outside release on an outside breaking route. We have to lean at that break point if I am not able to stack him, AKA getting skinny on your route. So let's play this again, full speed one more time. And again, fellas, against DBs who are scrubs, it's not going to matter. You'll just be able to run the route. But against a talented DB who's going to try to force you to his safety help, who's going to try to take away all routes that you run, you have to have something extra on your tool belt to be able to get you space. Okay, so now, next thing that you have to do as a wide receiver to be able to get separation, especially when playing at the next level, is against talented DBs too, for that matter, is you have to make your routes look the same. Or better yet, your press releases look the same, because that will stay in this DB's head. So we're going to be talking about a slide release here, but this is more like a slide diamond release, if you will. So you see all the top tier wide receivers do this, like Devontae Adams, you got Justin Jefferson. They'll come off the ball, they'll give this little slide or hesitation move, and they'll just take off and go run a fade. So maybe you've done that a couple times. Maybe you've gotten this DB to overcommit to that, and then or maybe, you've done it a couple times and you try it again. DB's right on your hip. He doesn't necessarily sit to the inside as much as he would. So what can you come at him with next if you have to run a slant or a 5-yard in? Let's play this full speed and let's show you. So he comes off, slides, takes off to the outside, and is able to get that DB to flip his hips open on that diamond release. So I call this a slide diamond release. Now, the reason why this works is because of what I just said. You're pairing the release off of other things. So DBs are taught is that when they see a wide receiver do this little slide to the outside, expect that he's going to slide, give a fake, and then run a slant. Now, so they'll sit to the inside, but we can use that to our advantage as a wide receiver. I could do this slide to the outside and then just take off and go, get skinny, get in this DB's frame, and give that quarterback still some space to fade me open. But I got him to hold to the inside because of my tempo with my release. So now maybe you've done that. Maybe you did that when you were backside on a route. So now you have to run this fade or this slant. You slide, you take off for 3 hard steps. You make it look like a fade because you're running in full stride. You're running hard. Your hips and your shoulders are committed to the fade. And guess what that does to the DB? That flips his hips open, and we could go win on this slant. And coach is all fired up in the back over here. That's exactly how you guys want to pair your releases together. And against disciplined DBs, you have to do that, fellas. So let's play this again, full speed one more time. Great job by this wide receiver using that slide, hitting that diamond release, and making his routes look the same. All right, fellas, really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. Always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, if you would like a 4-week wide receiver daily on-field training schedule, all the drills you should be doing mapped out with sets and reps, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to get you on that, fellas. I'll see you guys next time.